Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome to the Karey Carbaugh podcast, episode number 25. Bienvenidos y buenas noches, damas y caballeros, chicos y chicas, niños de todas edades. Y bienvenidos a el Karey Carbaugh podcast número 25. I appreciate my English-speaking friends allowing me to welcome in some of my Spanish-speaking friends on these podcasts. My name is Karey Carbaugh, and this is the Karey Carbaugh Podcast. Tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about Hollywood versus real world. Some stereotypes that are perpetuated by TV and movies. We're going to start with some stereotypes that might be a little bit more obvious, and then we will move into talking more specifically about stereotypes surrounding blind and visually impaired as well as other disabled people. As most of you are probably aware by now, I am visually impaired. I can see some, but I'm considered legally blind. And I'm still trying to find my niche with these podcasts, but I've had some people encourage me in that direction, and so we're still kind of feeling our way through this. So as we go through tonight's podcast, I would appreciate you letting me know if you're watching this live by dropping an L or the word live in the comments. If you're watching this on the replay, drop an R or replay in the comments. And let me know if you're getting value from what we're talking about tonight. I may try to see if I can answer some questions live. I haven't done much of that, but tonight I'm not going to be using my phone too much for the actual content. So we'll see as we go along here. I may try to jump on my phone and see if I can read some comments and respond to them live. If that doesn't end up working out, I will definitely respond to your comments after the podcast is over. So let's jump in here. I always like to give credit for where these ideas come from. I don't always have a plan for the next podcast. This is one I was going to do last week, and I wanted to do a little bit more research, but this came out of a presentation that my pastor Nick did at a men's group a couple weeks ago. And I've been thinking about this and thought this would be an interesting one to dive into for one of these podcasts. So with that, like I say, I like to give credit to where these ideas come from because they're not always my own. In fact, they're frequently not my own. They often come from other podcasts or other things that I'm watching, sermons at church, etc. This one's not going to be particularly biblical, even though the idea for it came from church. So, what do I mean by these stereotypes? Let's take a look. First of all, if you think about television and movies and the stereotypes surrounding men, let's start there. Oftentimes, men are portrayed as either these strong, like Western cowboy type, nothing can knock them off their game. They've got everything together, and they're just a strong character oftentimes. The other side of that is that many times men are portrayed in movies and TV as these kind of dumb bimbos that can't do anything right. If you think back to particularly some of the comedies, often portray men as stupid, can't make decisions. They need their wife behind them to make their decisions. The wife's the one that keeps the family together. And sometimes this is true, but I think oftentimes these stereotypes that are perpetuated by Hollywood become the norm or the expectation in society, that that's how men are supposed to behave. They're either supposed to be strong and have it all together and can't show signs of weakness, or they're dumb and stupid idiots that can't do anything right. When in reality, most men in our society probably fall somewhere in the middle. Let me know if you would agree with that or not by dropping a comment in the chat. But I think most men would fall somewhere in between. Sometimes they have things all together. Or I should say sometimes we have things all together, because I am a man. Sometimes we don't. And society, because of a lot of the stereotypes that are put forth in Hollywood, I think this drives a lot of this. Men can't show their weakness. Or if they do, then they're seen as these idiots that can't do anything right. And so, as a society, we've allowed Hollywood to kind of dictate this to us. Or maybe as a society, maybe we've dictated this to Hollywood. I'm not sure which came first. But let's flip that around now and take a look at the stereotypes of women. Women are often portrayed either as these real strong, bullheaded, pushing their way through to get things done. Sometimes mean, cruel. But then the flip side to that is sometimes women are portrayed as idiots that can't do anything right either. And I think sometimes, in particular, blonde women get typecast in these movies as the ones who don't know anything. They can't do anything right. They can't make heads or tails out of anything. And once again, most women would fall somewhere in between these two extremes that are often portrayed by Hollywood. Now, sometimes Hollywood does do a decent job of portraying men and women somewhere in the middle ground. But if you think back to some of the movies you've watched, let me know in the comments if you would agree that some of these stereotypes get perpetuated by the script writers. And some of that is dramatic license or humor, comedy, makes a show worth watching, makes people laugh. I get why it's done this way sometimes, but I think we need to remember that in the real world, this is not how people behave. If you see someone who maybe looks like a character on TV, they may not behave that same way as that character on TV. They may not be as strong. They may have a weak side to them, or they may have an intelligent bone in their body where the character that may appear outwardly to be like them on TV doesn't have a smart bone in their body. We need to remember that these are actors and actresses that are portraying a role that has been set forth by them, for them by the writers. But now let's take a look, now that we kind of understand these stereotypes, how are people with a disability often portrayed in movies? And I had a little difficulty doing some research. It was hard to find a lot of movies with characters who have a disability or specifically a vision impairment that I was looking for. I found some with characters in a wheelchair, characters that use a walker, an elderly character. And I think even some of those make the point that I'm about to bring out here. And that is that just like what we've discussed about men and women, oftentimes characters with a disability are portrayed in two ways. They're either portrayed as weak and helpless and can't do anything, and oftentimes this is brought out with what we would call blind mannerisms, specifically talking about blind and visually impaired. The character might grope and reach for something in front of them. In reality, most blind people don't do that. They have skills that they've developed, that we've developed. And so if you meet a blind person on the street, they're probably not going to grope and feel around, maybe in certain circumstances, certain situations. I know I find myself sometimes in an unfamiliar situation, not knowing exactly where something is. I might move my hand a little bit to find it and not just immediately go straight to whatever I'm reaching for. And I'm not sure how much of my hand motions are getting caught. I think some of them are getting caught by the camera. But I think you get the point. Blind people don't always reach for things and grope for things. Similarly, many times in movies, blind people are seen wearing sunglasses. And I think part of that is because they're often using sighted characters to play the blind role. And so those sunglasses may even have blinders on the inside of them so that the actor isn't able to see and is forced to be blind in the role. But again, I think there's a stereotype that many blind people or all blind people wear sunglasses. While it's true that many blind and partially sighted people wear sunglasses, that is often due to either the sun hurts their eyes, there's actually a physical sensation of pain, or they do it because depending on their blindness, the cause, some blind people don't have an eyeball. And that looks a little strange to people. And so to cover that up, to look a little more normal, they may wear sunglasses. Or if their eyes are cloudy or look strange, they might wear sunglasses. This is another stereotype, though, that is often portrayed with Hollywood. And they put contacts actually in the actor's eyes to cloud the eye. And in reality, many blind people don't have clouded eyes. Similarly, and I hadn't really thought about this until I was reading some other critiques of movies and TV shows with blind characters. They'll portray the blind person kind of looking off into the atmosphere, so to speak. Most blind and visually impaired people have learned to look at the person that they're talking to. And so this is another stereotype that Hollywood portrays. The flip side of these weaker and blind mannerism type stereotypes that Hollywood portrays, if they portray a blind character or a disabled character in any way. I've seen this with some of the movies that I looked at with people in a wheelchair. They're often either displayed as weak, needing help. They need somebody to push their wheelchair everywhere they go. They need somebody to help them feed themselves. They need, all of those kinds of things. But the flip side to all of this is if a person with a disability is able to function and able to do things, they're often seen as a hero, and they're often portrayed in the movie as a hero. Look at this person and look at all the things they can do. And you wouldn't do that with I'd hate to use the word normal, but a sighted person or a person without a disability. If they were able to walk down the street without assistance, you wouldn't put them on a pedestal. And yet we do that with people with a disability. If they're able to do something without assistance, we as a society put them on a pedestal. And I think part of this is because of the way Hollywood portrays them. If the person is capable and able, now all of a sudden they're a lawyer in a movie, or they're a hero. They're almost portrayed as a Superman type character. And this is where I've struggled a bit. I'll be a little bit real and honest here with you all. This is where I've struggled a bit with focusing my podcasts on my vision impairment. I've worked my whole life to overcome it, not to be put on a pedestal, but to live a more normal life. And so what I'm trying to avoid with these podcasts is putting people with a disability on a pedestal, because I do think that's the flip side of the portrayal by television and movies of people with a disability or people who are blind. If you disagree with any of this, please let me know that in the comments too, because I'm definitely open to criticism. I'm sharing, particularly in this one, I'm sharing my own opinion and my own observation, not necessarily backed by any kind of fact. And so if I'm off base here, particularly if you're someone with a disability or someone who knows a person with a disability, maybe a close family member, if I'm off base with some of these stereotypes, let me know. This is kind of a follow-on to the podcast I did 2 weeks ago where we talked about, now I'm trying to think of what the title was, but Mythbusters. So this is, I didn't exactly do this as my part 2 of the Mythbusters, but many of these myths about blind and visually impaired people in particular, and as I pointed out, other groups of people. Some of these myths that we hold as a society come from our media, our television, our movies, and now with social media, it's even more so. I've seen some videos out there that are supposed to be humorous, that are portraying people in a not so kind way. And whether it's because they're a woman, because they're a man, because they're blonde, because they're disabled, whatever. Yeah, those can sometimes be funny, but we need to remember that in the real world, that's not how all people act all the time. And sometimes it's not funny if a blind person stumbles down the stairs. It may not be a funny thing like it's portrayed in the movies. Without belaboring the point, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to cover tonight. Again, let me know if you agree or not. If you're watching this live or on the replay, let me know with a live or replay or an L or an R in the comments. And I often forget to say this, but like these videos if you do. If you like them, press the like button. That helps with the algorithms to get these shown to more people, and our numbers of watches are waning a little bit in the last couple weeks, but we're still doing good, and I appreciate all of the support that all of you have given me. But if you do like these videos, then like them if you do. As I've mentioned before, if you'd like to be added to my email list, I'm starting to put together some more private events. I haven't started any of those yet, but I'm getting close. And I'm starting to build an email list. I appreciate those of you who've reached out to me so far. If you're interested in being added to that, if you could just drop the word email in the comments and I'll reach out to you and get your email address. Or shoot me a direct message with your email address so that it's not public. I'll be sure and get you added to to my email list. The best place to direct message me is on Facebook. The second best place would be on Instagram. I don't check those quite as much, but I'm starting to try to check those more. So let me know if you'd like to be added. And with that, I will let you have the rest of your evening or your day back whenever you're watching this. Once again, I appreciate your tuning in and appreciate your continued support of the Karey Carbaugh podcast. So until next week, or we'll probably be jumping on. I did a special episode for Mother's Day, and I'm planning to do one for Father's Day on Sunday, so you can watch for that. It may be somewhat of a random time, depending on how things go that day, but just sort of a teaser that I'm going to probably pop in randomly. And I didn't get a chance to respond to comments live, but I will jump back on those. So with that, have a great evening and a blessed week. Be a blessing to those around you and do something positive for someone that you encounter this week. Until we meet again, have a great evening or a great day. Goodbye for now.